Yes, it is worth watching. However, I don't think it is as compelling as season one. It's a very fun watch. I binged through the entire thing, and I always wanted to find out what happens next. But I think that also is illustrative of some of the problems in it, and it sort of works against it in some ways. So let's talk about it. Before I talk about it, spoilers ahead. I will talk about like big picture things. I'm not going to talk about probably all the twists and turns, but naturally some of the things I want to mention will probably be very spoilery. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's a fun watch. That said, season 2 opens with something that I feel like most of us expected, but I also feel like it wasn't really how I expected it to play out. So there's a whole like cat and mouse game between Gi-hun, who by the way is the only guy that I know the name of. Everyone else will be doing nicknames for. But yeah, he's trying to find the games, and then there's like the police dude who's also trying to find the games, and that's kind of what I expected most of it to be about. Naturally, I did expect someone to end up in the games. The way Gi-hun got pulled back into them is not really what I expected. There's a time skip here, and suddenly Gi-hun has used like a bunch of the money, obviously, to fund a weird militaristic unit. I know that some of the dudes are like the debt collectors from season 1, which by the way, the fact that there's been 3 years in between, the show should have probably done more reminders. I've checked like Netflix's Twitter account. They're doing like actual pictures explaining who is who, because I feel like most people forgot because of these weird 3-year breaks between shows. Anyway, he has like a whole pseudo-militaristic unit, and I expected for Gi-hun to somehow be duped by them, and then there would be like a whole clash like amongst them, and then he would have this weird cat and mouse game of trying to figure out what's going on with the games, but then like Gi-hun is also being double-crossed, and then he somehow ends up in the games with no support. No, these guys are actually like 100% loyal to him, and they're just there. I found that a little bit weird. I thought maybe these like militaristic units might also have like family members that have been pulled into the games, something like that, but no, they're just like a thing that exists. And the biggest problem I think with season 2 is the fact that season 2 is not actually season 2. It is season 2 part 1. It's going to be season 3, but the fact that this militaristic unit thingy was like so close to finding the island and everything else, and then like that doesn't go anywhere. I think a big problem with this season, and they are like a good example of this, is they have set up a lot of guns on walls that never really went off, at least not yet. And it feels like a very odd decision to split it where they split it, because their story doesn't go anywhere, and their story is also spliced throughout the second season in, I feel like, very weird portions, where they're making a lot of progress, then they slam into a wall, then they disappear for like 2 episodes, then they're back, and the fisherman, who, by the way, I sussed out to be a traitor, like, literally by episode 2 or something. It was very obvious to me. But apparently that was supposed to be a twist. But then they're back, and then they disappear again. And I'm just like, what is the timeline on these events? Because, like, I think the games happen daily, right? But they are talking about, like, there's a storm today, we're gonna go back to sea tomorrow, but there's going to be a storm tomorrow. And I'm just like, what is the timeline on these events? It feels very disjointed, is what I'm saying. That's a bit like underdeveloped and odd, Gi-hun's side, right? So his allies and stuff. But I say that the way they have characterized his allies, and this is something that is, I just want to say, like, across the board, the cast for this season is so much stronger than I ever expected. I think having Gi-hun actually take like a sort of a back seat for a lot of the events was a really, really great call, because this show really shines when it has this sort of ensemble cast. And there are lots of different stories, lots of different characters that we're introduced to. After season 1, and especially after the ball game, I was like, there is no shot they will ever pull me back in. Like, I know all of them are gonna die, right? Like, I will never be invested. I'm not gonna lie. I am very invested in every single one of the characters. Some of the stories they've told are so gripping and so interesting. I want to see where they end up. I have to know where they end up. I want them to be happy. They are very, like, trigger safe in this season, though. Compared to season 1, every single person that they've basically set up as a character to root for is still alive. That's not true. Some of them did get killed off at the very, very last minute, but most of them are still alive, right? So I guess we'll see what happens there. But the characters are very, very likable, and I would put them on basically the same level as season 1. The ball game of season 1 is like the pinnacle of Squid Game for me. This is pretty close to that in terms of purely the cast, right? And I feel like that is even the villains. The villains are likable. The only character who I actually just found full-blown obnoxious is like the weird prophet lady. I don't mean this in like a she's a villain sense. I like villains. Villains are really interesting to watch. She isn't interesting to watch. She feels like she has been thrown in there to have this artificial, I'm doing quirky things and causing chaos because we need like a moment of drama. Like, wow, there's going to be a decision moment. Will they leave the game or won't they leave the game? This lady suddenly has created like a cult, and wow, one of our followers clicks the wrong button. And I'm just like, yeah, it was kind of telegraphed. Like, of course, the weird lady sitting and constantly mumbling in weird riddles, of course she'll cause chaos. It was, I should have expected it, but it wasn't fun to watch. It just felt like heavy-handed and obnoxious. So, that is probably the only character in this entire show that I don't find interesting or likable in any way. Everyone else, huge thumbs up. Even like I guess let's talk about the front man, right? Because the big thing in Season 1 is that there is a big twist at the end that obviously, again, the dude whose name I forget, was the host of the games after all. Season 2, naturally we thought we wouldn't get that, except we do, because the front man is in the games. And the way they handled the front man is really weird. So he is also a pseudo gun on the wall, but he is a sort of a deceptive gun on the wall, if you will, because I feel like when he entered the games, I was always expecting one big plot point that I feel like I need to talk about real quick. Gi-hun is introduced as a previous winner basically right off the bat. If they don't try to keep it under wraps at all, he immediately says, I've won the games, right? And what I immediately expected is for this to turn out to be like a false promise type of deal, right? And it does. He says the next game is going to be like the cookies, and it's not. And what I expected is that maybe they're going to have someone basically play the role of invalidating his experience. Basically, they would say the next game is actually this, and Gi-hun is like, I've played these games, I know what they are, but then the guy who says the other thing is actually right. They didn't do that with the front man at all. That's what I kind of thought they would be doing. Like, there's going to be this weird, mysterious dude who is sort of somehow knowledgeable of the game, but it's not the same game that Gi-hun played, and we know that it's the front man. It would be like a weird sort of a game master insert into the game, right? And I feel like that sort of could play off in this interesting way. It's not that. It's not that at all. He is introduced as a ally to Gi-hun. I was like, okay, so there is even more shady business afoot, and this guy might have put himself in the games to like feel the thrill of his own players, right? There's a really great scene with him like spinning the thing, and I thought, wow. So this is not like a situation where he has played these games his entire childhood and maybe that's why he has this like weird fascination with these games or something like that, right? Like he's not a prodigy, as I was saying. So he's like not a prodigy. He actually is playing these games in the same way that everyone else is playing these games. Maybe he did have like some kind of immunity. Usually with Squid Game in Season 1, you could go back and like look at the weird moments where he might have had immunity like the original host. So maybe there's also some of that here. I'm not 100% certain on that. But from now, it seems like he is just playing the games actually legit. But the twist, I did see coming, right? Like, there were a few scenes where he's supposed to be like this, like he's actually talking to Gi-hun, seemingly completely honestly. But I always knew that it was sus. I always knew that he will turn on him, and that's exactly what he does, right? At the very, very end, he even pulls the whole, this is what your little hero game, or however he said it, this is what it costs, right? So he is like a weird self-insert game master in this game. I just thought it might happen a little bit later on, instead of where it actually happened, like that twist there. But it's interesting enough. It's interesting enough, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how I feel about it. It did feel a bit artificial, again. I don't know. I don't know. I found it interesting, though. It is good enough. It's good enough. One more, like, big picture thing that I hope makes sense is, I feel like a lot of the violence and a lot of the horror of it is gone. Like, almost completely. And it's the same thing, by the way, before we talk about horror. The gunfights in the show are so dumb. Why does every single show nowadays have to have the obnoxious 15-minute shootout where people are just peeking and shooting and peeking and shooting? Just cut it out. It's annoying, especially in a show where, like, a single bullet is supposed to be incredibly weighty. Whenever you hear gunshots, you know it's bad. This just feels like, feels so cheap. I don't know why this keeps happening. Why can't no one in Hollywood make a show like this with actually weighty combat? Oh my god. Anyway, as I was saying, yes, I did not like the final assault of the players. I wish they would have done it like some other way. I don't know how they could have done it, but the way it played out, I was just rolling my eyes. I guess I can also say this right now. Episode 7, like most of episode 7, felt like a waste of time. The entire episode is just a dumb gunfight that eventually just is the obligatory frontman turn. That's it. It felt very telegraphed, and it's just people blasting, and nothing happens. It's annoying. Stop it. Anyway, so a big thing with this season, and maybe this is just me being desensitized to this kind of TV. Maybe I am just weird. I fully accept this. But this season didn't feel nowhere near as disturbing as season 1. Like in season 1, where we got like some of the behind the scenes stuff of how they operate, it was downright horrific. And whenever people lost the games, there was like that visceral moment of violence where it was really in your face about how ridiculous this entire situation is and how gruesome this situation is. This is not about people wanting money. This is people literally being ready to just watch people die right in front of their eyes and being covered in blood out of desperation. This season felt more about greed, which I guess you could say is kind of ironic because it's the second season for a show most people said doesn't need a second season, so the irony is probably not lost on Netflix either. But it feels like in this season, it was like we're playing a game, someone dies, oh well, we keep going. And like some of the characters are clearly like disturbed by it, but I feel like that sense is lost to us as the viewer. I think this is best showcased in the like the game where they need to go in a circle and there are like the 5 games, right? Whenever someone died there, it didn't feel like big at all, even though the entire floor is covered in blood. It was really weird. And I was just sitting there and thinking, why is everyone so cheery? And the way the editing is done, I think what they're trying to go for is obviously like the stark juxtaposition between this like classical music or whatever and this like childhood game and the brutality of death. It didn't hit at all. In season 1, it did hit. Whenever, again, in season 1, someone was shot, someone died, it felt incredibly raw. Here, it did not. It felt like a over-edited, over-dramatized thing where, wow, we're jumping around, and now a whole squad is blasted. Anyway, next squad. It felt weightless. That is like the best word I would use for it. Just weightless. Maybe it's because it's the second season and I already like know most of how this works, just because we already saw it. But I think it's more so to do with the editing and the way it was shot and the way it was done. Let me know if you feel the same way. That's just kind of how I felt about it. It just doesn't feel anywhere near as horrific as season 1. And I do feel like some of that may be because of the way the players are done as well. That it's not, again, out of desperation. It's like about greed. A lot of the characters in this season do really seem to be like more calculating. It's not like, hey, I need this, and more so like, how much do I need? Like, where do I draw the line? Right? Which I guess if maybe they done a little bit differently, the way like that whole split in the stay in the game or continue playing would have was done, that also could have maybe worked a little bit better. I don't know, because I thought like the way they did the who stays, who goes was also kind of like it was boiling and boiling and boiling, and then it all blows up. But then like there's again another twist where like the players turn against the game. A lot of that felt like very sudden. I feel like maybe we should have seen that clash happen all the way throughout the season, and then there's like that big explosion and everything blows up, whereas everything blowed up but there was nothing in between, you know. Whatever the case. Final thing, the sniper lady, her story is one of the very first things. This is the one that is actually like one of the guards, right? Like the one that is shooting people even though like they're supposed to be taken to the organ thing. So her story is one of the first that is set up. It has one of the most like personal touch points, right? Where she goes to the hospital, she delivers the hat, and then she joins the game. What the hell is her story? What? But nothing happened. What? It's gonna be in season 3, but why did it just end? Like it started in season 2, and like there was like that whole like, they attack her and basically like you have to stop doing this, and it's just done. That's it, no more. Nothing else happens. She does have like that dude, right? Like the father of the girl. They're obviously going to play off of each other in some capacity. But it was so weirdly done. Like it was just abruptly cut short, and it's just over. It's the same thing as I say with the military dudes, right? They set up this entire story, but the way it was actually executed is clumsy, in my opinion. Like, obviously, this is a continuous story. Yes, some story threads will end, some story threads will only be in the middle. But this one, it just feels like it's been abruptly cut short because we're gonna do a season 3. It doesn't feel satisfying, right? It's like the unironic The Walking Dead cliffhanger, where it's just there for you to come back, and that's it. And like, it felt weird. And actually, one last thing. This is a very weird complaint, I know. But when I started watching this, I couldn't help but notice that they've canonized some of the fan theories. So the Matrix thing. I might be misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure the original creator of the show said that the Matrix theory, where like Yi-hun dyed his hair red, is like too cool, and that he could have never come up with that, and that actually the fans came up with it. That's in the show now. And I'm not even super into Squid Game, so maybe there's like plenty more things that have now been canonized, but that felt a little bit too on the nose. Maybe it's just a me thing, I don't know, maybe. It did feel a little bit too on the nose. I will say that. Very weird complaint, I know. But yes, very big picture-wise, I do think it was fun. The sets they've built for this, by the way, they're gorgeous. Like, this show is beautiful. Everything they've done, it looks so good. Like the weird, abstract, pink and, like the blocks, right? Where they're shooting at each other. That entire place seems so surreal and like so almost liminal. It's great. The way they've encompassed the vibe of this show, I do feel like is really, really good in terms of visuals. In terms of the way that is actually paid off, like I said, some of it feels a little bit weightless, especially the gunfight. But yeah, if you watch this video and have watched Season 2, let me know what you think. If you watched this video and haven't watched Season 2, I would recommend watching it. I'm interested to see what happens in Season 3. Are the games finally going to end, or are they going to continue? I don't know. Clearly, the front man has now made his 180, and things are going to probably get pretty intense. I don't know if we're going to resort to, once again, like a free-for-all amongst the players, or there's going to be something more. We'll see. We'll see. I've got no idea where this is going to go, because like I said, I kind of expected, I expected a different turn than to by the way, one more thing. The way I feel like they zeroed back in on the games was also not the best call, just FYI. A lot of Season 2 does feel like a retread of Season 1, but just with different faces. And that is totally fine. If this is a new cast, the stories we are telling are very different from Season 1. So no complaints there. But purely because Gi-hun is still there, it does feel like this weird thing that is different but the same, if that makes sense. You know, if they were trying to do, I know that there's going to be like an American reboot. Telling completely different stories in a completely different location, but with the same games, that's fair game. There's a pun there. But the fact that Gi-hun is still involved and the objective of taking down the games is still the same, but we're still just playing the games, it does feel like we stumbled on this golden formula with Season 1. Now we just want to do it again without changing it too much. So just like, don't pay attention to it. We know you liked it once, you're gonna like it again, right? So that is like another thing that feels like a bit of a retread, but it was still fun to see. I'm not gonna lie, it was fun to see. Yes, Netflix, you got the formula. I like the formula. Keep making the formula. But yeah, that's it for me. I enjoyed it. I'm excited for Season 3. I know a lot of people are thinking that like this one didn't hit nearly as hard in terms of numbers. People are saying that like no one's talking about it. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Season 3 is already confirmed. There's the Netflix show that is already, the American show that has already been confirmed. So we'll see where all this goes. It was a much better Season 2 than I expected. I'll say that. I thought it was going to be a complete mess, where they're just going to try to do something wild. But no, they played it relatively safe, and it was interesting. So yeah, thank you for coming to my ramblings, and if you're watching this on the day it comes out, I'll see you back in a few more hours on the main channel for another big video. Alright, bye-bye.